One of the weirdest, dumbest, and stupidest crossover ideas that I'd ever heard of in my entire life was the Men in Black 21 Jump Street crossover that we learned about in the fall of 2014 after the Sony hack. I mean, so much was gleaned from that hack. It was amazing in some aspects. We got to learn the entire pre-story for Ghostbusters 2016, so we knew how bad it was going in. I mean, not quite expecting it to be as bad as that particular push or that pitch, but it was. We also learned about the talks between Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige to bring Spider-Man over to the MCU and how those talks had fallen apart. And then due to fan response, as I said at the time, it was basically a guaranteed because the fans are going to demand it. And what do you know? Spider-Man Far From Home, the second Spider-Man film in the MCU, opens up in just 2 weeks. I mean, we learned a lot. We also learned about the potential crossover between Men in Black and 21 Jump Street. After 22 Jump Street had just come out a few months prior and done very well, talks of this particular crossover started to happen. And everyone kind of laughed at it. Like, no one ever really figured it was going to happen. It was just talking. Turns out it was getting close, or at least it was in like development in some aspects. And what killed it was a producer, right? It was a Jump Street producer who I also believe is a Fast and Furious producer, which interesting. Anyway, it says here that Jump Street franchise producer Neal Moritz reportedly blocked the planned crossover film with Men in Black from happening because he did not want to take a pay cut on his usual producing fee. Yeah, because, you know, when you have a movie that could potentially do really, really, really good, especially considering that it's so, I guess, avant-garde or weird. Don't look for some weird something to happen. Kill the project because you're not going to get your pay. Never mind the fact that a lot of Hollywood works on the back end side of it too. But this again, Neal Moritz works with the Fast and Furious franchise, so he probably didn't want to cut it. And back in 2014, what had just come out at that point in time? Paul Walker had just died. Fast and Furious 7 was in the process of getting finished up, and probably figured it was going to be a big movie. It was $1 billion film, so it does make a lot of sense. Anyway, as far back as 2014, Sony was considering the possibility of combining two or of their recognizable IPs. Because Sony, again, has a lot. Amy Pascal was a terrible studio head. Tom Rothman ain't much better, but we can start to see there was desperation that was coming out of Amy Pascal when she was running the studio. We learned a lot of that from those leaks. It was one of the reasons why Paul Feig was approached 3 times to do Ghostbusters 2016, and she finally wore him down enough in order to go and tank that franchise for a while. Anyway, director James Bobbin even signed up to direct it in March of 2016, and the movie was given the title MIB 23. Despite having a few key pieces in place, the film struggled to get off the ground and was ultimately scrapped for Men in Black International, which, listen, I like Men in Black International. It's a pretty fun movie, very straightforward. I didn't really like the concept of MIB 23. When I first heard about it in 2014, I laughed at it. When it was brought up again in 2016, I really laughed at it. But now here it is, 3 years later. Part of me is like, yeah, I would have gone and seen it. I would have gone and checked it out. I wouldn't have, I would have laughed at it, but I would have gone in hoping that it would be okay. Because I love 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street. I love the Men in Black movies. Why not have a crossover, right? Like, why not do it? Like, well, you know what? I mean, they're not doing anything else with them, right? Now, it says here that members of the creative team, including Bobbin and Jonah Hill, chalked it up to difficulties of mixing the two properties. While both are genre comedies, Jump Street specializes in R-rated meta humor, while Men in Black leans more towards 4-quadrant. Yeah, it did lean more towards 4-quadrant, but Men in Black 3 and definitely Men in Black International were not really hitting all those quadrants. So there's no denying that the filmmakers might have struggled finding a way to make the crossover work, but it sounds like there was something else at play that prevented it from happening. According to the Hollywood Reporter's report on the behind-the-scenes woes that plagued Men in Black International, it said Moritz, who is a producer on the 2 Jump Street films, refused to compromise on his customary first dollar pact. Apparently, MIB 23 required heavy hitters like Steven Spielberg, Walter F. Parks, Phil Lord, and Chris Miller to forego rich producing deals. When Moritz refused to budge, Sony decided to move on. So the way it's explaining this, and I'm not too sure how true that is, but the way it comes across to me is that everyone else was relatively on board to forego their rich producing deals to take a pay cut, probably just to see this thing happen. You know, I mean, it must be one of those moments where Phil Lord and Chris Miller, I think, given the two of them and their creative ability, they probably thought to themselves, oh, hell yeah. Like, why not? Let's make this thing a reality. Screw it. Let's do it. You know, and they did that kind of same concept with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. They took something, twisted it, turned it on its ear, and won best animated feature. I would have loved to have seen what they did with Solo, because I have a feeling it would have been probably better well received than what we got, even though that's not entirely Ron Howard's fault. But anyway, so yeah, so they decided to go on and reboot the franchise with MIB International, which is, again, not a terrible film. I enjoyed it, but I would have liked to have seen what they did with this. It would have been so interesting to watch Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum team up with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith for some weird random event, like a weird Elseworlds crossover thing. But at the same time, it's fun to talk about now, but it is sad that one producer who didn't want to take a pay cut is ultimately what killed this thing from happening. Now, some of you out there might argue, well, by him sticking firm to getting paid, he ultimately saved the franchises. But considering that it's been 5 years since 22 Jump Street, there was kind of talks of 23 Jump Street for a while, but that never went anywhere. And Men in Black International didn't really live up to expectations. Who's to say what would have been if this would have been a reality? I think if Phil Lord and Chris Miller would have come on to produce and write the script and Bobbin would have directed it, I think we would have had something wholly unique, wholly original, and wild, just wild. And I'm usually not a huge fan of these kind of dumb crossovers, but I think I would have warmed up to it, provided all the pieces would have fallen into place. Well, we'll never know. we'll never know. At this point, it's simply a what if scenario, and it's interesting to know that that a producer is the reason why it failed. Not a script, not an actor, but a producer who wouldn't take a pay cut. There we have it on that one. Anyway, your thoughts, your opinions. Let me know. Is this something you would have wanted to see? Is this something you would have cared about? I want to hear your thoughts. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.